Okay, here we go. Wow. Been some interesting times. Alright, I'm Sean Maurer. This is 11th Division. Finally getting around to making another video. I guess I want to weigh in on this panic, fear-demic, whatever, the pandemic. It seems like the protests have been causing the control freaks to back off a little bit. We'll see what happens. I got this nice mask. It's funny because I got like a little wardrobe of masks, and I figure if they're going to try to turn me into a non-player character, that's what this wearing the mask is. It makes everybody look like they're part of this thing, that that they bought the lie, and they're going along with it, and they're fearful and so forth. So it depends on what mood I'm in. I can share my point of view, and I can actually contradict the message of the mask itself. And I think that if they're going to force you to do that, then you should take advantage of the opportunity to contradict their message as much as possible. And so I wear this into the stores. Of course, I don't wear it whenever I don't have to. I take it off immediately. It's actually bad for you to wear a mask like that. You're breathing air that's not full of the toxins that you're rejecting. So I found this. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to make fun of the New York Times, as I usually do. I got lots of New York Times stuff to make fun of. So here's the thing that they put together. Behind the mask, glimpsing a silent neighborhood. And so they made it look like here's their wardrobe, and it's just silly nonsense. There's one, where it doubles as a burqa, and they call that man. So, anyways, the idea behind the New York Times article here is to just make you comfortable with the new norm of being a slave to the system, and just making you a non-player character. It says we only got out a purpose now, and with some apprehension. Oh, we only go out with a purpose now with some apprehension. We do, is that right? We go out, walk our dog, a black 9-year-old Labrador Retriever, and go occasionally to Trader Joe's, CVS, the post office. We made one trip to the bank. The lines outside these places and the kosher market, now busy for Passover, are calm, if a little tense. Most people are lined up 6 feet apart. Okay. Almost everyone we see in Upper West Side is heeding warnings, wearing masks. People really seem to avoid one another and give a wide berth when passing. So, this is like, this is just wonderful, Wow. It says here, okay, the silence, though, is the biggest change. There's much less traffic on Amsterdam Avenue, except for ambulance going. Of course, the ambulance are, there's zillions of people going, to the hospitals because of the fake phony corona. But is it the masks that are keeping us quiet, or just making us more open to listening? So there you go. There's your slave encouragement from the New York Times. Make sure that you're good little slaves and you're doing what's actually unhealthy for you, because they're gonna. I see in some places in New York, they have police thugs going around beating people up if they're not social distancing properly and so forth. Pretty creepy out there. Okay, this is, let's see here. I'll look back to 2000. I just like to look at how, okay, here we go. Here's New York Times. New York Times, they actually have a quiz to see if you make sure you're being properly indoctrinated. Who became the first leader of the major Western nation to contract coronavirus? Okay, that's your one question. Trump administration this week completed a rollback of the Obama-era environmental rule affecting what? Test how closely you follow the headlines this week with our news quiz at New York Times website. So they can test to see who's being properly indoctrinated and make sure that the propaganda is going in and taking root. Okay, now this basically what I'm doing is I got older papers that like here's April 4th. Okay, so these are going back into the depth of the fear campaign. Okay, here's like the headline. Death Mountain, New York pleads for more outside up, and they got the picture of the tent and scramble, business vie for loans. It's everything, it's the whole, this is the whole narrative. It's right here in print. You can see how they go about scaring people. And by the way, let me go right away to this here. I'll put on the appropriate mask. Here we go. Where is that thing? Oh, here we go. It's the appropriate mask for the occasion. And here's what I wanted to show you, if I can. Let me see. All right. Let me see if this works. It's not working. Okay. Well, anyways, in the background, I'm supposed to have Plandemic, the movie. But my little thing here is not working. Here it goes. Now it's working. Okay, I'm going to go the other way. All right, I'm good. So, here, let me pop it up. Let me see here. Whoops. Here it comes. Okay, so here's what you need to see. You need to see this movie as soon as you can. I think I could take myself over here. Okay, all right. So, Plandemic, the movie. Okay, this is a doctor who's been, she's spent all of her life researching viruses and so forth. And she spells out exactly what's going on. So, you can get this on LBRY. I don't know if it's on YouTube. But let me give you here's the little summation. Okay, the description. I don't know, I can move this over. This thing's not behaving properly. I guess I didn't set it up right. Anyways, Plandemic documentary, hidden agenda behind COVID-19. Humanity is imprisoned by a fake killer pandemic. People are being arrested for surfing in the ocean and meditating in nature. Nations are collapsing. Hungry citizens will be rioting for food. The media has generated so much confusion and fear that people are begging for salvation in a syringe. Billionaire patent owners are pushing for globally mandated vaccines. Anyone who refuses to be injected with experimental poisons will be prohibited from travel, education, and work. Note, this is not a synopsis for a new horror movie. This is our current reality. Let's back up to address how we got here. In the early 1900s, America's first billionaire, John D. Rockefeller, brought a German pharmaceutical company that would later assist Hitler to implement his eugenics-based vision by manufacturing chemicals and poisons for war. Rockefeller wanted to eliminate the competitors of Western medicine, so he submitted a report to Congress declaring that there were too many doctors and medical schools in America and that all natural healing modalities were unscientific quackery. Rockefeller called for the standardization of medical education. Thereby, only his organization will be allowed to grant medical school licenses in the U.S., and so began the practice of immune-suppressive synthetic and toxic drugs. Once people had become dependent on this new system and the addictive drugs it provided, the system switched to paid program, creating lifelong customers for Rockefellers. Currently, medical error is the third leading cause of death. The U.S. Rockefeller's secret weapon to success was the strategy known as problem, reaction, solution. Create a problem, escalate fear, then offer a pre-planned solution. Sound familiar? Flash forward to 2020. They named it COVID-19. Our leaders of World Health predicted millions would die. National Guard was deployed. Makeshift hospitals were erected to care for a massive overflow of patients. Mass graves were dug. Terrifying news reports had people everywhere seeking shelter to avoid contact. The plan was unfolded with diabolical precision. But the masters of the pandemic underestimated one thing: the people. Medical professionals and everyday citizens are sharing critical information online. The overlords of big tech have ordered all dissenting voices to be silenced and banned, but they are too late. The slumbering masses are awake and aware that something is not right. Quarantine has provided the missing element: time. Suddenly, our overworked citizenry has ample time to research and investigate them for themselves. Once you see, you can't unsee. The window of opportunity is open like never before. For the first time in human history, we have the world's attention. Pandemic will expose the scientific and political elite who run the scam that is our global health system, while laying out a new plan, a plan that allows all humanity to reconnect with the healing process of nature, the healing forces of nature. 2020 is the code for perfect vision. It is also the year, 2020 is the code for perfect vision. Also the year that will go down in history as the moment we finally opened our eyes. And I hope she's right. That's Dr. Judy Mikovits who put this together. She's extremely interesting person, who is extremely educated, scientific, experienced, and some of her experiences, she's experienced them coming after her and silencing her. She's very successful in her career in medicine. Okay. What if Congress cannot? This is great. Okay, they'll say, what if Congress cannot assemble? Now, now that would be very good. That would be probably, that would be, that's one of there's a few things that happened during this thing that are very good. If only it would shut down Washington permanently, we really don't need, the states should actually all be individual nations by now. If you want freedom, you can't be listening to a small handful of control freaks that are controlling all the entire 50 states. It's ridiculous. Each state should be their own national government, and we need to get rid of the federal government. Anybody who loves freedom, that's a no-brainer. So let's get rid of Washington. Let's close that permanently. That's a great idea. So that's what if Congress can't assemble, the world would be such a better place. It would be, the first step towards the new heaven and the new earth. Okay. So, as COVID-19 makes social distancing a matter of life and death, a growing number of lawmakers favor remote voting. So that's all they're going to do. So the world that emerges from this cannot resemble the old world. No, because they screwed over. They're trying to, F everything up on purpose because they want to make sure that you're all under control now. Okay, there's no way but through. That's true. There's no and that's why we shouldn't have done the whole social distancing thing. Is terrible. It's destroying society on purpose. And I really feel sorry for the old folks in the old folks' homes who, have to die alone. They would rather die with people around, even if it means dying sooner. That's not a big deal. In fact, the hospitals, they're killing people with these ventilators because they're allowing them to crash, so they have to so they can make extra money. I thought this was pretty sad. This is okay. A threat to all comic superheroes. So it's not really a threat to all comic superheroes, but basically it's a threat to the comic stores. And I just wanted to read a little bit of this because I've all my life I've been into a similar business of print material for retail sales, and it's hard to say if it's going to survive. People were asked to walk away from their businesses, and they shouldn't have. None of this should have taken place. There was no reason for people to, no reason for people to be forced to do what they're doing. Now, if you were scared, and you shouldn't have been scared in the first place, but if you were fearful, you stay home. The people that aren't fearful need to go out. In fact, see, to me, this is the perfect opportunity to say, okay, let's get all the fearful people and the people who are courageous and split up and get two different countries. You can have your fearful country, and we can have our courageous country, and we can proceed that way. That's that's one way of dividing. Jesus was a great divider. He said, "Do not think that I came to bring peace. I came to bring a sword." And it's division, and really, if you care about people and you love people, you will see that everybody can be served better if we were separated according to preferences, rather than try to force people together and so forth. At any rate, whatever the outcome of all this upheaval, no one expects Marvel or rival DC, which publishes the adventures of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, to fall by the wayside, though their parent companies, Disney, which owns Marvel, and AT&T, which owns DC, have sustained steep financial losses during the pandemic. These imprints are viewed as crucial pipelines of superhero characters and storylines that can be adapted into television shows and blockbuster films, so they have nothing to worry about, really. There are relatively cheap research and development departments for some big movie and TV shows, said Rich Johnston, founder and head writer of the comics news site Bleeding Cool. They generate all this intellectual property, and if you pick up a comic book, you've got all the design done for you. So, it's easy. It's low, low fruit. For the big money people, but whether their smaller competitors can also ride out the months ahead remains uncertain. What you might end up seeing is a feeding frenzy where bigger companies jump in and start buying up the stuff. Sound familiar? This is distributors, printers, publishers on the cheap. Okay, so this is what they're going to buy up on the cheap. Distributors, printers, and publishers. Johnson said, he added, in the meantime, a lot of people are going to lose their livelihoods. So isn't that wonderful? And it's all planned. This was planned. You see where this, I think it's HR, let me see if I can look it up. Anyway, there was what is it called? A House resolution. They decided to, let me see if I can go find this. I had put up a good let me see here. I put up a good video on my Facebook of it was like a compilation of the protests and a song. It was a song. It was a rap song that somebody put together, an anti-pandemic a rap song. I put that. Let me see if I can find that, because on there he had the information where it shows you that this lockdown plan for epidemics and so forth was first introduced over a year ago, and so they were planning this. Everybody's seen the Fauci thing where he says that that this is going to happen. That we're going to have this. We're going to have this. This thing's going to take place. We're going to definitely have a pandemic and so forth. I don't know where my library is here. I can't find it on the library, but let me see. It was on a Dollar Vigilante. You guys ever watch Dollar Vigilantes? Jeff, he's really good. He's got a ton of great assessments to share. Yeah, let's see if I think it was this one maybe. All right. Yeah, this is it. Okay. This guy put together a video. Maybe I could play this. I guess I could. I don't know if I guess I could play it. I don't think I'm gonna. I don't think he's gonna care if I play his. This is the part of the video. Let me turn my music down a sec here. This is the part of the video. Oh, there's my old analog equipment there. Here we go. Let's see. Oh, I don't. Oh, here it comes. Is this coming over, or is that the music? Hold on. I gotta figure out what I'm doing. Hold on. Let's see. All right. Let's see if this is coming over.
There are other countries that if you had a pre-existing condition, and let's say the virus caused you to go to the ICU and then have a heart or kidney.
But if someone does...
No, I don't... yeah, I guess this is it. Let me see. Here it is. Whoa, that's it right there. Hold on. Let me stop it. Whoop. Okay. And this is part of that song. He put this song... This is a really good song somebody put together on... Okay. It's called HR 748. CARES Act, C-A-R-S, and let's see here. It was. Bring that back just a little bit. Second here. All right.
The death doesn't mean that was the cause of the death.
I'm up on stage.
Okay, here we go.
60,000 deaths.
And all the rage
I gotta get this one part for you.
50 states, 50 plans is an experiment that will now play out for months.
Okay, here we go. All right. Introduced July 24th, 1919. The CARES Act. Okay, now I want to see if I can see what this stands for. Oh, yeah, here it is. Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, 2019. Okay, and then it was passed in March, this year. So, wow, that's an interesting piece of evidence, right? Okay, so this is all this lockdown crap, and all this is they had this all planned a long time ago. Yeah. So, and it's all about what we just read. Okay. So, one of the things it's all about. It's all about a lot of stuff. It's about trying to get everybody vaccinated. It's about control. But one of the things it's about is this idea of you're going to crash the economy and buy up. Like I just read about with the comic book distributors, and buy up for pennies on the dollar. People's destroy their livelihoods and just buy them up. I think it's do the same thing with the house market. Eventually they're probably going to try to do that too. Things get so bad, so many people have to sell their homes at once. Somebody's going to buy up all these houses on the cheap. So let me. Okay, I don't know if. All right, yeah. So let me get back to this. Okay, I hope I didn't blast you out too much for that music. But anyway, I'm just trying this for the first time. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so as I was saying about the comic books, distributors and the small guys are all they lost their livelihood now. And these big companies will just buy them out, consolidate. Now, speaking of that, so I got this book, Encyclopedia of North American Railroads, and it's interesting because they have articles about like any encyclopedia, any interesting things that have gone on in the history of railroading. And I thought this was an interesting thing about Jay Gould, May 27th, 1835, through December 1892. This is a financier and speculator. Gould was born in Roxborough, New York, the son of John and Mary Moore Gould. As a young man, Gould worked for a blacksmith and clerked in a country store. He obtained a sketchy education in an academy and learned a little surveying going into this work when he was age 18. He contributed to the mapping of several counties in New York, Ohio, and Michigan. In 1865, he published a book, History of Delaware County and Border Wars of New York. By the time he was age 21, he had saved $5,000, and with that sum, he opened a large tannery in Pennsylvania. In the early 1860s, he left the leather business and started to speculate in stocks and bonds of small rail lines. He made a great deal of money and for a while was manager of the Rensselaer and Saratoga Railroad. In 1867, he and James Fisk assumed seats on the board of Erie Railroad, of which Daniel Drew was treasurer and controlling agent. These three men, widely called the Erie Ring, manipulated stock, embezzled funds, and used Erie resources for wild speculations while generally neglecting the running and the maintenance of the railroad. In 1868, an attempt by Cornelis Vanderbilt to take over the Erie was thwarted when Gould and his colleagues issued 50,000 shares of counterfeit stock. The three conspirators fled to Jersey City to avoid arrest. Gould, however, in defiance of the threat of arrest, traveled to Albany carrying a satchel full of cash with which he hoped to bribe New York legislator into legalizing the stock issue. One house passed the legislation, but a settlement was reached with Vanderbilt before the legislation was completed. Gould and Fisk, joined by Tammany politicians Peter Sweeney and William Boss Tweed, who were on the Erie board, then forced Drew out of the Erie and commenced a spectacular series of frauds and complicated financial dealings that made millions of dollars but ruined many others in the process. They looted the Erie with huge stock watering schemes, raided their credit export and produce markets, and in 1869 attempted to corner the gold market. Later, the scheme brought on financial panic known as Black Friday. Public outcry and litigation followed with the death of Fisk and fall of Tweed Ring. Gould was ousted from the Erie on March 10th, 1872, with a personal fortune estimated at $25 million. And, back then that was, more like billion. Gould had no difficulty continuing his career as a stock speculator. He bought large blocks of Union Pacific stock, becoming a director in 1874. He maintained control of that railroad for the next 4 years, buying control of the Kansas Pacific Railroad in the interim. In 1879, he added Western Pacific to his list of railroads under his control. He forced Union Pacific to consolidate with Kansas Pacific at par by threatening to extend the Kansas Pacific Salt Lake, connecting with Central Pacific to form a new transcontinental railroad. He later sold his Kansas Pacific stock, clearing about $10 million. By 1890, he controlled almost half of all the railroad mileage in Southwest through ownership of the Missouri, Pacific, Texas, and Pacific, St. Louis Southern, and the International Great Northern. Other interests included New York World, which he owned from 1879 to 1883, New York Elevated Railways, and Western Union Telegraph Company. So this is the kind of thing, this is why these pandemics and so forth are so valuable to. It's the kind of thing that you can expect, to see happening. And so it's been going on for a long time, stock market crashes and so forth. Oh, this is this is funny. This is, well, it's not funny because somebody died, but I mean, the way the newspapers are handling this, they were just looking for headlines, and if you can get a famous person dying from coronavirus, you got more people that say, "Oh, I knew that person." So, but this is like they're scraping the bottom of the dish for celebrities here. Where is it here? Oh, there it is, over there. Okay, retired. Let me see if I can find it. How can I get that on the camera? There it is. Retired president of ShopRite grocery store chain in New Jersey dies from virus, family says. I mean, that would be like a man who once knew the guy who shook hands with the AutoZone parts manager dies coronavirus. They're really scraping the bottom of the dish to try to get stories, coronavirus stories. And by the way, this thing, everybody has the coronavirus. So, of course, anybody who dies is going to die of coronavirus because everybody has it. This was interesting, too. Okay. This is from the Bucks County paper. Conrad Melee's gas riots in 1970. So I want to talk about this a little bit. Hold on just a second. My alarm clock keeps going off. Okay, turn that stupid thing off. Okay, so Levittown gas riots. Okay, so I'm comparing this. I'm saying about the pushback, the lockdown protests, because back then in the Levittown gas riots, and I was part of that. I wasn't doing the rioting. I was trying to actually keep the peace, so but okay. In the new city, thousands were idle at home, no job, no place to go, and no sense of when it would end. Malaise, it would be called. Business laid off or furloughed employees, unemployment rose, government authorities warned about unnecessary car trips. Stay home, they said. Weeks passed, summers approached, Levittown grew restless. Broken board, catastrophe struck in June 1979. And by the way, this is written by J.D. Mullane, who I don't think has much of an internet presence. He's just on the print here. Business is laid off, right, and furloughed employees. Weeks passed, Levittown grew restless. Broken board, catastrophe struck in June 1979 with 2 nights of rioting at 5 Points intersection in the heart of Levittown. Automobiles were burned, businesses were sacked, neighbors turned against each other. When it ended, there were 200 arrests and nearly 100 injured cops. Lawsuits lingered for decades. An oil shock hit the U.S. that year. The economy slumped, and then heavily reliant on Middle East crude. Pump prices spiked to about $5 a gallon in today's money. Gasoline shortage caused 90% of the gas stations to close. Rationing came. People waited in the gas lines for hours and then could just get $5 worth. And there was people scamming them. They would say, oh, they'd walk the line and say, if you pay up front here, it'll save time when you get to the pump. And then they would just walk off with the money. So, you forgot what a tinderbox it was back then. People were fed up, said Herb Phillips, then a young sergeant with Bristol Township Police. Levittown gas riots were international news then, but today are an obscure footnote of interest mostly to academics who write papers for a few. Their studies almost always conclude that Levittown gas riots grew from vague disillusion with American dream in the car-centered suburban heartland that defines it, what Builder Bill Levitt called the new city. But if you lived through it, the reasons were more obvious. People were stuck at home and bored. They couldn't get gas and go out anywhere, he said. Independent truckers were among the hardest hit by the fuel shortages, which, this was the fuel shortage, of course, are, they're man-made. I mean, they just don't produce as much. It's not like there's not enough petroleum in the ground. Okay, so the truckers came through with a convoy, blaring horns, and blue collars from Morrisville to Fairless Hills honked and waved support. On the afternoon, June 23, hundreds gathered at 5 points, a convergence of 5 roads tipped before gas stations. A trucker blocked the intersection, one of Levittown's busiest. Phillips was the first cop on the scene. The thing I remember when I got there was all those truck air horns blowing. They were laying on those horns. I never heard anything like it. The non-stop hell intimidated. Even today when I hear a truck horn, I flinch. I don't like that sound, he said. The police had to clear the highway. When an officer ordered a trucker to move, the trucker refused. Instead, he climbed atop his rig in defiant Rocky pose. The crowd cheered, then jeered, and as he was toppled, arrested, handcuffed, and shoved into the squad car. Let me see if I can turn this stupid thing off. Okay. All right. That's when the beer bottles and the cans flew our way, Phillips said. The intersection was cleared, but an uneasy peace remained. The next day, June 24th, was hot, muggy Sunday. At dusk, people still stewing over the aborted trucker protests gathered at 5 points. At first, there were dozens, then hundreds and thousands, 2,000 probably, maybe more. They waved to passing cars. They chanted, "More gas now, cheaper crude, no more food," or "No more food." Okay. So Fine Butler protest, and there's a Bobby So Fine Butler protest anthem. I don't know that one. Some in the crowd were beer drunk. Rocks were thrown at the gas stations. Neighbors argued with each other. Fistfights broke out. The saddest thing I ever saw were neighbors turning against neighbors. We were trying to break up these fights when things blew up. The gas stations were attacked. Automobiles' tires were pushed into the intersection and burned. A Shell gas station was destroyed. Frightened patrons at the Cosmos Diner were trapped inside and took cover beneath tables. Police were overwhelmed. They retreated, and Township Commission declined an emergency. Police riot squads were called from Philadelphia. A small army staged in parking lot in the nearby Acme supermarket, and the officers marched up in the middle of New Falls Road waiting to angry crowd. Stones were hitting us. We were literally being stoned by people who otherwise were supportive of the police. These were Bristol Township blue-collar people, and cops are blue-collar people. But these people had reached the end of the rope, and it snapped. Some 80 police dogs were set on the crowds. Enraged, they broke into a farmer's market, and produce became ammo against the cops. A watermelon crashed down on my helmet, Phillips said. You don't realize how heavy one of those things are until it hits you. Eventually, 5 points was cleared. People couldn't believe what happened. You went to 5 points a day or two later, and they were shaking your hand and thanking us and apologizing, Phillips said. Retired from the police department in 2000, he's a pastor of Lahaska Methodist Church. He sees parallels today with grim economy and stay-home orders to what happened in the summer of '79. Frankly, it might be a bit worse today, he said. Back then, people could still go to church. They could still see their families and hug them and bury them. The Jersey Shore wasn't off limits. Traditionally, that's where you go to relax. So he says he thinks it's all in place and needs a spark. And it's interesting because now I was there. I was standing on top of an overturned car in the middle of the. They took my picture in the Philadelphia Inquirer, but I wasn't really actually writing. I was trying to keep some calm and peace. But you see how that's how you get things done. I mean, that was it. these protests, the lockdown protests are great, and if it comes to cranking it up a little bit more, that's what you have to do. I mean, this is it's like a war. The people that are operating this thing are your enemies. They're not like out look. Since when do they care about people? They don't. They want the population reduced. Anyways, they're just using this. Let's see here. This is what the newspapers look like. Everything's okay. So they're bringing, they're emptying the computers out of the schools and taking them to people's houses. Travel reductions, pandemic. That's a breath of fresh air. They're saying because of people. Because people aren't living, then things are better. Okay. Okay, 500-bed hospital could open this weekend. Okay. Business need cash to stay afloat during the pandemic. Poison hotline flooded by coronavirus calls. Here we go. This is the one. Look at this. Younger Americans are dying too. Yippee! That's gonna make that's gonna put a smile on Bill Gates' face. Wow, what an excellent head. Younger Americans are dying too. Woo! That's wonderful. Good thing. We really have a pandemic going, our fear-demic. Okay. This is a little bit newer now. This is April 11th. Conspiracists blame cell towers for outbreak and arsons follow. Brace for apocalyptic surge in New York avoids worse so far. Final word remains with the governors. Okay, so this is not true. This is not true. This is about, in actuality, the decision on when and how to reopen is not entirely Mr. Trump's to make because he never ordered it closed. The stay-at-home edicts have kept the vast bulk of Americans indoors were issued by governors state by state, but the president did issue non-binding guidelines urging a pause in daily life. Okay, but that's not true. Even the governors really don't. The governors are bribed by people like George Soros and the other people that are conducting this fake pandemic. These governors, they're the ones that are like part of this. There's some kind of world organization of governors or something, that bypass any other, so they can bypass state laws and promote globalism in their cities. There's some kind of, I forget what the name of the organization is. It sounds like a George Soros operation. It's the whole thing with sanctuary cities. That's part of it. The bankers, corporate executives, and industrials plead with Trump to reopen as soon as possible. Medical experts beg for more time to curb the coronavirus. Well, this is just the opposite of what's happening. Okay, the bankers want the bankers and the big industrials and so forth are benefiting from this. They want it to continue, and it's the medical experts that are saying, the true medical experts are saying, to end it, they shouldn't have had it in the first place. It was kind of interesting because I know that there's been some Muslim countries that are having a hard time preventing the religious Muslims from not gathering. But here in the Philippines, there's Christians denying the distancing orders. So, yes, Filipino Christians are braver than American Christians. I would believe that in a minute. Conspiracies. Okay, the cell tower thing. Okay, London. April 2nd, a wireless tower was set ablaze in Birmingham. The next day, a fire was reported at 10 p.m. at a telecommunications box in Liverpool. An hour later, an emergency call came about another cell tower in Liverpool that was going up in flames. The episodes starkly demonstrate how coronavirus conspiracy theories have taken a dark turn by spilling out into the real world. In just a few weeks, the pandemic has given pre-existing fringe ideas online a new urgency by playing on people's fears. So they're playing on people's fears. Wow, that's not something New York Times would do. I mean, come on. And the thing is, think about it. If you believe that these G5 cell towers are causing problems, it would be like if somebody's coming after your kids and they're going to hit them with a stick, aren't you going to grab that stick and break it or something? That's how they see it, honestly. Okay, now there's one school in California, a little school in the country that refused to close, and so they need to make a big. They do to dedicate, a front page space on New York Times to. Let me see how I can get this going. There we go. Okay. So there's one school that didn't close, and so New York Times has to dedicate some of the front page to this. Those we lost from the faces of coronavirus pandemic. Okay, you're right here. Remember I was telling you about celebrity and trying to get as many celebrities as you can in there. They're scraping the bottom of the dish to try to find famous people that died. Now there's one here I'll see. It says somebody so one of these old jazz musicians dies, and coronavirus was involved. They don't tell you how it was involved. It might have been involved in the fact that they let them die because if they can put them on a ventilator, they make more money. That's how it was involved. It might not have been actually anything to do with the actual virus. It was the policy. They always do this. They blame the virus for the policy. It's the policy that's killing people, not the virus. Coronavirus update. Okay, now here they're talking about migrant workers, how they're okay with migrant workers. They're needed now. They're essential employees. Let's see what else is here. Okay, pandemic scrambles supply chains as trade hits the brakes. Well, wait a minute. See, that's the pandemic didn't do that. The policy did that. It's the okay. Now that they're kind of celebrating the fact that there's nobody in the churches. Of course, that makes them very happy. Bad health and poverty leave regions shaky. Okay. Now South Korea is only 3-foot distancing. Okay, here's one of them. With the mass graves things that they've always used these mass graves for. Okay, so my take on all this. Okay. Brace for apocalyptic surge. Who's allowed to return to work? Okay. So now, the pandemic pushes White House to lay tougher rules, food stamps. Okay. Everything. This whole paper here is coronavirus. Now that was what was going on. Now I noticed they're starting to lighten up a little bit. The newspaper's starting to lighten up a little bit, where, instead of like 98% of the newspaper being about coronavirus, maybe it's down to about 75%. Something. Okay. Not every town qualifies. Oh, here we go. This is interesting. Okay, this is it's no holiday on the seaside boardwalk. When will the fish come back to be hooked? That's what they call the the people, the customers. That was the question faced by Bob Stewart over the weekend as he looked down the length of the boardwalk in Seaside Heights on a typical Palm Sunday. There would be a huge parade as well as an Easter egg hunt, but as far as the eye could see, there wasn't a single human being. Normally, the place would be packed wall to wall with people. I'd never seen this before in my life. There's not one person up here. Well, there was one. It was him. Okay. Okay. So, all I know was a cop. There was one police making sure nobody. That's what. In my youth, I used to work at the same game operator. Okay. All right. It's hard to imagine such a scene in the era of social distancing. Stewart has no alternative. Over the winter, he took on additional 8 stands in the middle of the boardwalk. He was busy fixing them up. Okay. Okay, they're waiting for the $1,200. You know, I never got my $1,200 check. I don't know if anybody else got one. I never got that. Not yet, anyways. Yeah, so anyway, it's a sad story about, you know, people who, you know, are just pushed out of their livelihood, not because of the virus, but because of the policy of destroying humanity. That's the policy. So I thought this was kind of interesting. Okay, so this comic here. Okay, after the pandemic, okay, and the guy's watching, you know, the sports network, and, you know, he's talking about all the stuff they got to catch up on in sports. So that's what your life is full of. That's what you're going to do. That's why, you know. And I was saying there was somebody once asked from this particular, you know, what we call the synagogue of Satan. And somebody said, how come members of your particular group that you can't mention are not into sports? And he says, well, sports are for the goy, and we you know, use that time instead of watching sports to control the world. That's what this guy said. So anyway, that's, so, you know, my take on this whole thing is exactly that. It was a pandemic. The recommendations were not only unnecessary but harmful. It destroyed people's business. They're taking away some of the basic fundamental ingredients of humanity, socializing and seeing people's faces and so forth, and intermingling with folks and so forth. There were articles in the paper of people in old folks' homes that say that they wanted to not die alone. They would rather die sooner than die alone like this. Okay. Barr panders on COVID-19 church services, but he's right. Okay. Okay, he says anything the Trump administration says or does on religious liberty arouses skepticism because this president has relentlessly pandered to his evangelical Christian base. Okay. Okay, maybe I should read this. Let me see what it got, because it looks, it looks pretty evil. It's commentary in the Courier Times. As part of that campaign, he has exaggerated the legal significance of what are largely symbolic actions. That was true executive order in the President Donald Trump's telling. It did away with the provision in the tax codes that prohibits churches from endorsing political candidates. I don't know where he's going with this. Maybe I shouldn't bother to read it. Tempted by the church may error scheduling drive-in services, yet the faithful listen to the word of God in their cars with the windows rolled up. But at Greenville Mayor Eric Simmons noted there could be other problems with drive-in services. Okay, so this is about, making sure that Christians, you know what, and the Bible says that, Christians are supposed to meet together. So, this is a good opportunity for them to attack, the church. By the way, I didn't do any social distancing. I didn't do any safety. I didn't do anything. I visit my mom every night. She's 92. I went to church every Sunday without any mask or any distancing. I'm not part of this. I'm not part of this. You don't like it? Throw me in prison. I don't care. Okay. So That's what I did. Nothing. I did nothing. I only wear those masks because I have to, and when I do, you know, they look like something like that. So that's, you know, because I know that it's fake. I'm not gonna go along with a lie. I get, you know, that's not. I'm not supposed to go along. I got to pick up my papers. Okay. All right. When home becomes headquarters. Okay, so now they're celebrating. This is a paper. This was March 29. This is them just sort of celebrating as the coronavirus sweeps the globe. Even chief executives who normally flip from meetings to conferences, chauffeured SUVs, are confined in the room. So this is kind of showing you how people, you know, normalizing, like, you know, just stay at home, it's all fun. There's another one that did. This was an interesting one. This is New York Times again, too. This is, okay, this one is executives, and then this one is normal people. I guess that's how it works, okay? And they're just showing you how wonderful it is to be a slave, and, you know, here's the one guy who says his brother was killed in 9/11. So now his brother's killed in 9/11. Now they're coming at him again with a false flag event. This poor guy. See, but they're making it sound like, you know, stuff happens. You know. Okay, here's somebody. My parents lived in Iran. It's always been difficult to go back and forth, and then the Muslim ban happened. So okay, so he's trying to say, okay, you know, the Muslim ban. Okay, here's another one who's had all kinds of problems. You know, so they make it look like this is just another, you know, stuff happens event. Okay. Here's a guy who was drafted into the Syrian army as a tank driver. We had orders to shoot anything moving. The Syrian army was a New World Order regime replacement. That's what that was. And then, of course, then they got somebody who was a gay guy. They got to always get your gay guys in there or whatever. So that's trying to make, you know, look like, well, you know, this is fine. It's fun to be a slave. Where social distance is practiced and isn't. The coronavirus pandemic has ground America to a halt. No, it hasn't. The coronavirus pandemic hasn't done anything. It's the policies. It's the policies of the control freaks have ground America to a halt from coast to coast. But states in the South, in the Midwest, and the Mountain West have not reacted the same way. Okay, so this is March 29th. Or to the same degree, despite warnings from the health experts, drastic measures are needed to slow the spread of the virus. The impact of social distancing and work from home measures has been captured in a new way using data on smartphone movements. An analyst which provided the Times opinion section, Descartes Labs. Okay, so anyways, they're saying we're not going to make rash decisions simply because some other states decide to do things. Governor Reeves has said. He later told viewers in a Facebook question, Mississippi's never going to be China. Mississippi's never going to be North Korea. Well, that's what they want. That guy's right. You know, but if he really wants to not be China or North Korea, what he needs to do is secede from the United States. Because the United States is the New World Order, and that's why they want to control everything. That's all. The United States is just. Let's kick Corona's ass. They're really. That's so, you know, that's so cheesy. It's like, oh yeah, we're all like, that's what this is all about. Small business owners can now work. Oh, okay, yeah. So this is about what the pandemic means for climate change. So, okay, so I'm comparing this. Okay, every year flu season comes around, and you have some coronaviruses and so forth. And we never did this before. And we didn't need to do it, and we shouldn't have done it. And the difference between this season and any other season is this whole fear campaign of the media and the newspapers and so forth. It was a purposeful psychological operation on the people. That's the only difference. It's like how the weather became climate change. The weather became global warming. And then global warming became climate change, and climate change became climate crisis. So now you're not watching the weather you're not watching the weather, you're watching the climate crisis. If you to be clear, the coronavirus pandemic is a tragedy. Yeah, not the pandemic's the tragedy. The tragedy is the response. Okay. A human nightmare unspooling in overloaded hospitals, which that's not true, they weren't overloaded. Unemployment offices, unnerving speed, barreling toward a horizon darkened by economic disaster and crowded with portents of suffering to come. But the global crisis is also an inflection point for that other global crisis, the slower one with even higher stakes, which remains in the backdrop against which modernity now plays out. As the United Nations Secretary General recently noted, the threat from coronavirus is temporary, whereas the threat from heat waves, floods, and extreme storms resulting in the loss of human life will remain with us for years. So always need a crisis, always need how hopeful you feel about the direction this response is taking may depend on how long you refresh your news feed. You know what? I watched less than 2 minutes of network news during this whole thing. That was 2 minutes too much. But because what happened was, my mom likes to watch after Jeopardy. We watch Wheel of Fortune, and they preempted Wheel of Fortune so many times with this 2-hour-long Corona scare with David Muir, that fake, phony. I think he's a robot. I don't even think he's really human. And they that's what they had on instead. And that's the 2 minutes, because we watch and see if it was just a little blurb or if it was going to be a whole show. And if it was going to be a whole show, we turned on the music and went back to reading. I hope you build direction. Okay. As Al mentioned, you refresh your news feed. Just a few weeks ago, which feels like 100 years ago, a friend suggested that there may be a sort of Freudian transference from coronavirus to climate, that the fear and sense of urgency will be lifted from the faster-moving crisis and settle on the slower one, becoming a catalyst for much-needed action. Oh, man. So far, it seems any transference is working in the opposite direction. Lockdowns and social distancing are providing a litany of necessary actions ripe for the transferal of nebulous climate anxieties and fears. In this context, consumerism perversely provides some relief. You can finally go buy dry goods and prepare for the apocalypse. What the hell is this crap? But personal consumption and travel habits are, in fact, changing, which has some people wondering if this might be the beginning of a meaningful shift, maybe as you hunker down with cabinets full of essentials, your sense of what consumer goods you need will shrink. Maybe even after the acute phase of coronavirus crisis passed, you will be more likely to telecommute. Lifestyles that include, for example, frequent long-distance travel already seem essentially questionable in light of the climate crisis. See, it's a climate crisis. Okay, so the lifestyles may come to be seen as grossly irresponsible. And then, that's what happens, so somebody like myself who believes that this thing is a scam, I'm grossly irresponsible. Let's see. Sweeping changes in individual habits, particularly in wealthy countries with high per capita consumption, could lead to lower emissions, which could be an unequivocal good. But personal habits may matter less because of the direct reductions in the carbon emissions because of behavioral contagion, a term from a social science that refers to ways, ideas, and behavior spread through a population and can, in terms of climate action, lead to changes in voting and even policy. So, behavioral contagion. That's the thing, everybody wears a mask. And like I said, I only wear one because I have to. But, I take advantage of that. Right, write a good globalist control freak message on there. An anti-CDC message. I get, what's the one here? I got CDC. Throw the CDC in prison. That's a good one. I think I'll wear that today when I go to the convenience store. Coronavirus is bad for the climate even on the most macro levels. Lockdowns and social distances have slowed climate research around the world. Okay, so that's the problem. To a halt. NASA is on mandatory telework. Research flights to the Arctic have been stopped. And field work everywhere is being canceled. No one knows how much climate data will never be collected as a result, or when research might be able to start up again. And that's it kind of reminds me of how some people took 9/11 truth movement and try to make it into kind of if you're for 9/11 truth, then you're pro-Muslim. There's people that actually pushed it in that direction. All right, so let's see. We got a few more newspapers, and then I remember I was doing a book review, and I'm going to get back to that in my next video. We'll get back to this. What is the electron? That I'll continue that book review in my next video. Let's see here. What's this? Rational panic, but also rational hope. For far too long, America's response to the coronavirus lacked what you might call rational panic. From the experts to the markets to the president and his cable television court, an irrational calm prevailed when general freakout might have prepared us for the crisis. That's great. So that was being calm, was the irrational. You're supposed to freak out. You're supposed to be in a big tizzy. Oh my gosh. Let's kick coronavirus's ass. Why don't we kick the policymakers' ass? They're the ones that need to have an ass kick. As the policymakers. Okay. Doctors are writing their wills. Especially says it's not harmful to people that are young. The movie studio system is penetrated by a group that American officials conclude is a front for Kim Jong-un. Oh yeah, this is okay. I know what this is. This was something the New York Times put together. It was like 10 big events in the decade, or 20 big events. I forget exactly, but big events in the world of technology. It was the decade from 2010 to 2019. Different big events in the world of technology. And so I circled up a couple of them. Gamersgate. Okay, let's see here. Gamersgate. When women come into this equation and say, you need to start thinking about how women are treated in these games and change that and include us, for a certain amount of the population, that is incredibly threatening. We are saying that we are going to take away their culture and change it. To me, it's very similar to growing up in Mississippi and seeing Confederate flags on people's trucks. They have that because they're proud of that culture. Asking people to be more inclusive is a real affront to a certain kind of person. Well, let's think about that statement. Let's think about that philosophically. Let's suppose that you are YouTube and you want them to be more inclusive and not ban people who have alternative opinions about about the coronavirus thing. See, so it's a fake argument. It's just saying, you know, you shouldn't have your set of values, but it's okay for us to have our set of values. That's all that means. All right, what's this? Okay, this is about. Oh yeah, that's just. I always thought this was so fake. This idea, this thing about the North Koreans attacking Sony. I don't know. Should I bother reading? It's kind of. It just seems such a fake news event. We understood early on, within 24 hours, that this was a significant event. The damage was extensive. 70% of our computers were down and destroyed, and our email and other information had been stolen very quickly. We moved to pen and paper and set up text chain tree because the only way we could run the company. It brought to public light what a cyber attack would look like. In fact, a very harsh way it was also demonstrated that the capabilities of North Koreans. The attack went off in a big way. It sounds like babies were taken out of incubators, left on the cold hospital floor to die. In fact, that's what all this is. This whole newspaper thing about coronavirus might as well have been, babies were taken out of the incubators and left on the cold hospital floor to die. And then it turns out that's all. They just make things up. You don't have to. Nothing has to be. You just make it up. That like that guy that recently. They caught one of these big news organizations faking a line of cars coming into a coronavirus testing site. I got to talk about that too. Let me see. This is about. YouTube has a billion-hour day. We had a huge impact on the world by pushing people in some directions. What seems crazy is that we didn't even care where we were pushing them because we were just monitoring the watch times. Some filter bubbles got really toxic. We saw in particular conspiracy theories. When you start watching a video telling you the earth is flat, YouTube was recommending hundreds of videos telling you the same thing. Well, the earth is flat as an intelligence psyop to discredit the truth movement. What is the milestone to me represents is a step. This is when they had their billion-hour day, whatever, step along the way where YouTube has gone from the village to this major metropolis, where not only is it a reflection of what's happening in the world, it also has influence on the world. One of the challenges my teams have been working on is how does YouTube live up to that responsibility? Well, by banning people that they've changed a bunch of things. In January, they said that they would decrease the promotion of conspiracy theories. That's a really great improvement, but it's still far from being enough. The problem is that the recommendation engine that handles 70% of the views on YouTube is flawed by design. If the recommendation engine is not even able to understand that the earth is not flat, it's 2,000 years backwards. So why would we want this algorithm to handle all of political information? So basically, that's just a big censorship, and that's why everybody's going to LBRY. And so you want to make sure that you follow me on LBRY because probably YouTube eventually scrubbed me. So. I never expected to become an activist. I began my career This one's about Mark Zuckerberg. Okay, Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. I began my career as a technology investor in 1982. I spent 34 years as a true believer in what technology could do to make the world a better place. In January 2016, I see things going on in the Democrat primary on Facebook and Facebook groups nationally associated with Bernie Sanders that appeared really inauthentic. And then I saw a series of civil rights things starting with Black Lives Matter in March in 2016. Then Brexit hits in June, and that's when I first realized, oh my God, the same advertising tools that make marketers so successful on Facebook can be used to affect the outcome of an election, and that's when I freaked out. Well, why would that be a problem? I don't see how that's possibly a problem. I need a little language. Instead of publishing the op-ed, I sent it to Mark Zuckerberg. Oh, this is somebody that's not Mark Zuckerberg, by the way. Okay, Mr. McNamara is invited by the technology journalist Walt Mossberg to write an opinion article for the tech news site Recode. Instead of publishing an op-ed, I sent it to Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg, Facebook's chief operating officer. That's October 30th, 2016. So that's when I go to them and say, I've written this draft op-ed that basically says, I believe that the algorithms and business model of Facebook, as well as the culture, are allowing bad actors to harm innocent people. I spent 3 months pleading with them to do everything in their power to protect users from this, and I failed. I might have said it was somebody else's problem, but for whatever reason, I chose to look at it as a different way. I had helped Mark keep the company independent, and I helped to bring Sheryl in, and for 3 years I advised them. My firm had profited from it. I never expected to become an activist, and the experience itself has been depressing in the extreme. I've worked with most of the companies that I'm now criticizing. I know a lot of people who work there. I do not think they are bad people, but they have come to believe things that I do not understand. So he's talking about trying to get, Facebook more in line with the control freaks that run the world and say what you're allowed to believe and what opinions you're allowed to hold, and so forth. And you got to, understand there's a lot of pressure on these guys. Once if you're up in that level of a position where you can control things, you will be controlled. So this is kind of interesting. The Great Empty, they call it, and this is a photo. It's about like a dozen pages or more of photographs of how this policy of antisocial policy of preventing people from living normal lives has changed the look of the world. Now, this kind of reminds me of The Great Empty, The Great Leap Forward. They like the fact that they emptied the world of life more or less. I mean, that's it. So here's one of the things about the coronavirus. So you see probably where they have the base pairs is 29,811 base pairs to coronavirus, and I think there's been at least 3 different isolations, and I think all 3 of them differ by 1 or 2 base pairs. But the Abbott's laboratories, they say they got this short test. It says that they have used a strand of DNA, a DNA sequence, for I guess it would be an RNA at that point. I mean, it's it's not the whole. So an RNA sequence. It's unique to the coronavirus, but it's a much shorter. It's a much shorter piece. So I went to look up, see if I could find that sequence. I couldn't find that online. Maybe somebody else, because I wanted to plug it into one of these places that can identify sequences to see where else because that would be like saying, okay, we got this chain of letters here, THE, and we're going to the library, and any book that has these letters THE in a row is going to be test positive. So it's probably more specific than that, obviously. It's going to be more specific than that. But somebody had sent, I don't know if it was, like one of these world charities or something, that sent test kits, coronavirus test kits to Tanzania. And the Tanzanian government and the leader, the president and so forth, they had the insight to test it on other things than people, which is very clever. And I guess it's because if you're in one of these like kind of third world environments like that, you got to test your food if you're the president before. So they're used to that kind of thing, and so they tested goats and sheep and even fruits and vegetables, and everything was testing positive. So that kind of sort of backs up my theory that whatever this reagent, whatever this line of code that they're searching for must be very prevalent. And so, I think that everybody, the coronavirus, everybody has. They've always had it to some degree. You got it in your system, or you have, exosomes that are very similar, so forth. So that if they're going to be testing, they're going to get a lot of positives. Everybody sort of dies with the coronavirus involved. I mean, especially if they're going to, isolate it and amplify it and so forth. You're always going to be able to find what you're looking for. Yeah, so that's what I think. I remember to watch this. Let me go back to this here. Where was I here? I want to go back, remind everybody to watch this movie that we were talking about earlier on this video before I go. Plandemic. Let's bring that back up if I can remember how to do that. I think that I got it from this direction. I think I had to go this way first and then this way to shrink myself. But at any rate, Plandemic, you want to make sure you watch this, because she gets into all this, what I was just talking about, all the different aspects to what the doctors are saying, the scientific aspects of all the genetics and everything that's involved in this. So make sure you watch Plandemic and share it with millions and billions of people. I see that on here on Library, there's dozens and dozens of people that have already put it up. So I put it on my Facebook. I think everybody should share it as much as possible. It's just such a shame to see that we've allowed people people walk away from their businesses and their livelihoods and so forth. They didn't have to do that, It's a shame that's happened. But at any rate, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Remember to follow me on AlBRY. I can't get on BitChute, so that's why I don't recommend BitChute, because I'm banned from BitChute. So, alright guys, see you later. Take care.